Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Hines here, coming to you from the East Coast. And my friend Bob Stewart still over there on the West Coast today. Bob, how are you doing?
Chad, I am fantastic, my friend. Although, you know what? Out here on the West Coast, we got fires going on. And today, for some reason, it's extra smoky out there and it's extra metallic in the air. So I'm inside. I've got my air filters running it on top notch here. But yeah, we're good out here, man. It's nice and beautiful, but there's some forest fires around.
Well, I hope everybody is safe and that any of our audience members that are impacted by this, let us know if there's something we can do to help. And we hope you are all evacuating to a safe territory area. Bob, here, all I see are blue skies with that big, gigantic ball up there that brings sunshine, which I don't remember when I lived in Washington personally.
I don't think it ever. Yeah, we put it away for the 5 years you were up here with us. But
there you go. Now, Bob, you've told people this many times. They don't see us. We see each other just to have that, face-to-face opportunity and with our guests, things like that. They don't get to necessarily see us yet. A few episodes ago, you saw I was trapped in a closet.
Yep.
So I was surrounded by boxes trying to make a little office with a microphone hanging from the ceiling. Last few episodes we did, I was working in my home gym because I actually had my microphone suspended from my tonal and it was where the Wi-Fi was strongest and I couldn't chance it. Bob, I want to let you know that today I am in my home office podcast recording studio coaching space. It's not decorated, but I'm at least out of the closet. I have hard wire now for the recordings and I'm getting closer and closer to being exactly where I want to be for these things.
Man, Chad, I can't wait till that day, my friend, when we get to show up and you're like, you know what, I'm dialed, but baby steps, we'll get there. We'll get there.
There you go. And audience, we appreciate, or I specifically appreciate you going along this journey with me. If I'm a little echoey now and then until I get some things on the wall, Dave keeps yelling at me because sound bounces. Hopefully he's made me sound better than I probably actually deserve. Bob, we have been doing a lot of reading, you and I. We challenge each other again and again to find an interesting article that we really think is something we want to take to our audience. And we've got two that we're going to be recording today. So sneak peek, folks. We've got two we're recording today. Who knows what the second one will sound like? We'll have some fun and it'll sound completely different. Yet I had the article that we decided to record first. I don't know. You probably flipped a coin on your end when I said which one. And the thing that caught my eye, Bob, was it was all about emotional intelligence, which we did a series on way back. I mean, folks, you got to scroll back to season 1, episodes 11 through 16, where we did the emotional intelligence overview. Bob, do you even remember recording that one so long ago now?
I mean, I have a loose memory of it, Chad, but that was 185 episodes ago or something. I remember talking about it. A lot of these concepts are things that we're constantly working on ourselves personally to get better at, right? And so, yeah, I remember a little bit, but maybe we'll talk today about some refresher things from that and potentially even kind of overlap some of the things that we talked about 2 years ago.
Yeah, there you go. And folks, you can always jump back, as I said, to episodes 11 through 16 from season 1. You can go to winmakegive.com where you can find our series. It'll take you right to them from our website if you want. And while you're there, hey, you can register for the Wealth Series 2.0. Bob and I are going to keep saying it. It's coming. We just need to get Ben nailed down to finish recording it so it's ready to go because we don't want to bring something that's not what you all deserve. So, Bob, as I was reading and I was doing my research and I was reading some headlines and some great articles, I found this one that talked about 7 smart phrases that highly emotionally intelligent people keep saying. And I was like, well, okay. I got to say, we've discussed, and we discussed this in the program, Ben probably has a high EQ score, as they call it. What do you think your EQ score would be? Not on a specific number. I don't think I have a huge high intelligence EQ score. I think that's a challenge for me sometimes.
I'm right there with you. And honestly, for me, I think it ebbs and flows. I was just thinking this, like, if you're somebody that calls yourself emotionally intelligent, you probably need to take a step back and like, right, you're probably giving yourself too much credit. And so I think it'd probably be weird if either of us were like, I'm really highly emotionally intelligent, Chad, because we probably have some blind spots if that's how we think about ourselves, right?
Sure.
And so, look, as looking at some of these phrases, there's some that I definitely use consistently. And there's others that I'm like, gosh, you know what? Like, I can totally see how that could take the edge off of somebody else and somebody using that, like that. Wow, I should use that phrase more often, right? So I'm probably somewhere in the middle. Some days, Chad, I get up and I ate better that day. I got a little exercise in that day. I don't have a bunch of the stressors of life sitting on me. I'm probably a little bit more emotionally intelligent. There's other days I wake up, I skip breakfast. I don't get out to, play with the boys and get a little exercise in, and I'm a little bit more, a little bit more wound up. And probably those are the times when I'm less emotionally intelligent. So
sure. I think it just depends on the person I'm sometimes engaging with. Like that person I called for help on one of their 1-800 numbers and ended up getting outsourced somewhere. I probably lost my emotional intelligence as soon as I got transferred. Drives me a little nuts. But Bob, the reason this article really stuck with me is because I want to be better. I mean, I want to grow, and we believe our whole audience wants to grow as well. So my whole thought was, well, if I can just steal these 7 phrases, maybe I can use them in communication and conversations more, and all of a sudden my EQ score will just naturally go up because I'm stealing what smarter people than me are using.
So, it's funny, Chad, as I look at these phrases, and we'll dig into them a little bit, but as like you start to dig into them, I realize, like, who's really emotionally intelligent? My therapist. Like, a lot of these things are things where she's like, do you ever ask yourself why you get so upset when your kid does that? And like, no, I've never, why are you making me do this exercise right now? Honestly, like, right. So yeah, let's do it. Let's dive in.
Bob, I'm thinking maybe we need to bring your therapist on as a guest for one of the episodes.
And I don't know if Glenda would do it for us, but I could ask her. I don't know.
Well, sure. I don't want you there for the interview. I think it'd be much more fun if you weren't, for our audience's sake.
Therapist, client privilege, Chad.
All right. If you won't tell us anything.
Not a real thing, by the way. I know doctor client privilege, attorney client privilege. I'm just assuming all the shit I've told this lady that that is a real thing. I hope it is.
Well, she can talk to us about a hypothetical Robert that she works with, maybe. All right. So, Bob, you hinted at question 1 or phrase 1 that people with high EQ use regularly. And that's, let's think about why. Let's think about why, right? So when I teach people about questions, why is actually the only question, Bob, that really can make you defensive, right? Why are you wearing that hat? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? We can get defensive, but it also can open up some amazing thought-provoking questions. Like you just said, why are you getting angry when your son does that, right? Why is the person in the car beside me yelling at me as they drive by, right? Why am I blank? Let's think about why is a question that somebody EQ would ask.
So I think that here's the difference. When I start asking you why, Chad, you get defensive. But when I start asking myself why, then I'm forced to kind of unpack what made those feelings come up. What made, Ben would say, a lot of asking why would be, what's my DNA on that thing, right? What, like, yeah, my kid's pissing me off because he's doing that, but like, why am I getting upset that my son, is doing that thing, right? And most of the time, what I find is when I start to ask myself why, is I realize, like, it probably wasn't them trying to do this to me, right? Or it wasn't that thing. Like, it's probably something I did. And so it makes a lot of sense that emotionally intelligent people would question things out there, like, to themselves. Not to you, Chad. Why'd you do that? That's probably the opposite of emotional intelligence, right? Coaching you that way, right? So yeah, let's think about why. But for ourselves, let's not be running around asking everybody else, why'd you do that? Why'd you react that way? Why'd you respond like that?
Unless you're a therapist and your job is to challenge your patient that way.
And that's a lot of, what's funny is, and this is on my road to being more emotionally intelligent. What I realized when when she will do those things to me sometimes is I've never considered why. I've never once slowed down and thought, why do I get so anxious when my boys are making me late for school and I start to get a little demonstrative with them when I don't care if they're late to school or not? Really, like, where does that angst come from? Right. And most of us do not examine these things about ourselves. We don't examine why we get angst. We don't examine where our anxieties are coming from, like really examine them, right? We assign those to other people. We're like, my kids are making me anxious because they're making me late. But like, why? Like there's some, and I know now, right? I've asked why do I get upset with my boys when they're 2 or 3 minutes behind, when it's at the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal, right? I know that answer now only because my therapist made me ask these questions. So I know that, if we can ask these questions of ourselves, you can save yourself the money I pay every week for therapy.
There you go. Self-therapy, you don't have to pay for it. We're saving you money. That's part of season 3. Make more money right there. You just saved paying a therapist by asking yourself that. All right, Bob. Number 2. Ready? Can I see if I understand? Can I see if I understand, as kind of that number 2 question here that emotionally intelligent people are asking? Because wow, right? What a powerful question. Because the first thing it's saying, Bob, is I want to understand. I'm having a challenge. Help me understand. I'm coming from contribution. I'm reading the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People yet again. We just talked about it on the 15-point plan, right? That's seek first to understand. So this, can I see if I understand? That's the first thing right there that I'm attempting to learn. I'm not just pushing you aside, right? Second, it's a question. Questions always demand answers. So we create a conversation that's going to come from that. And then the last thing is, now I can summarize their words back to them, making sure I do comprehend. And now we're on the same page before I get into, okay, here's my perspective on what that situation is. What's your thought? I mean, has your therapist said to you, can I see if I understand?
Sure. She does that. She'll take something I've said, right, and kind of feed it back to me to make sure that the advice that's going to come on the other side of that is in line with what she heard me say. Right. I think I like the question aspect here. Like, maybe I want to dig into this. I think like when you're asking that, because like the alternative could be something like, they tell us something, right, how they're feeling or whatever, and I go, okay, I understand what you're saying, right? Or I get how you feel, right? And then I go into like my rebut or my feelings on that same thing, right? But when I say, can I see if I understand, I'm basically asking permission to then to give the feedback, to kind of do that, the other side of it, right? It's like, so can I see if I understand? This is what you were saying. I get agreement there. So now we're in agreement. Then I've got more permission to go and kind of rebut that versus just, okay, I heard what you said, but I've been thinking about what I want to say back to you, right? It establishes for them that I did hear them, which I guess is your first one. Like, you've signaled that you actually care, right? But restating it means not only do I care what you said, I internalized it, I heard it, right? And here's how I heard it. Because it could give them a chance to say, okay, well, hold on. No, that's not what I meant, right? And I think, look, my wife and I, this is all the time, right? She says something, I assumed I know what she meant, I'm back at her, right? And I stopped and said, wait, hold on, can I see if I understand? You want me to do this, then that, then this? It's better than just, I get it. Like, you want me to do this, then that, then this, right? It softens. One approach. Makes a lot of sense that people are, more emotionally intelligent people would come at it from that directive.
And one of the things of emotionally intelligent is empathy. And I think asking this question right there opens up some empathy, right? Can I see if I understand? Now I'm going to connect with you a little bit more, whether that means I'm coming down to the level you're at or whether we're at an equal level. Either it's still, can I see if I understand?
And here's the deal. I think, like, as a core element of being a human, we want to be understood.
Yes.
Even on small little things like driving directions or something, right? If I gave somebody some driving directions, I might want them to say, here, let me see if I understand. So I take a left at that stoplight, right? Like, yeah, you got it, man. You understood me. Good, right? I think that's a core thing humans want. We want to be understood by others.
Thankfully, Waze doesn't have those emotions because I don't I just want her to get me where I'm going as fast as she can get me there. And then, as we all know, it becomes a race. Can you beat the GPS? Okay, Bob, next on the list. And this is one I do use because this is one that is absolutely appropriate for me, right? It's, I make this mistake all the time. I make this mistake all the time, right? So what we know, and we learn this from How to Win Friends and Influence People, the sooner I can put myself down, the sooner people will want to connect with me and lift me back up. So if I can get into a conversation with him and say, Bob, look, I make this mistake all the time. Okay. It's easy to miss that left-hand turn that you were talking about or something like that. Okay. Now I've brought myself down. Now you're saying, nah, man, I get it. Right. It's an emotionally intelligent connection that allows us to have that empathy, allows us to have that social connection with people, and allows us to have the relationship with us and them. And now there's no blame coming along. There's no, Bob, you missed that left turn again, right? It's, hey, I make this mistake all the time. I know it's easy to miss that left because it's kind of hidden behind the gas station.
Look, and I think it's like the phrase itself, Chad, you don't have to use it exactly like that because it might be, I've done that before.
Yep.
Right. It doesn't have to be, I do that all the time. Right. I've made that mistake. I've done that before. So my wife has really, when we were growing up, Chad, most of us, like our parents sat on a pedestal. We never heard one story about any bad thing my parents ever did, any mistake they ever made, anything, right? It was like, and so my wife's constantly challenging me with my kids to do this, right? Hey, listen, don't act like, I get it. You're mad at the kid because he threw the baseball in the house and it knocked over the nice vase, right?
Yep.
Like literally just happened like 2 days ago, Max. But like you never did anything like that when you were a kid, right? Because I come at that like, what are you doing, man? Why would Chase? I get it, bud. Right? It was raining out. We're inside playing. Look, when I was a kid, I did that. I remember breaking my mom's, right? Like my son will shut down if I just come at him with, what are you doing?
Yep.
Right? Why would you throwing baseball in the house? Like for me too, just even remembering that that used to make that mistake, right? Or I've done that thing before. It allows me to kind of level set with my son and be like, hey, I get it, man. Right? Again, back to empathy, I think more than anything. So I do this with my team all the time because like you said about yourself, I've made every mistake that they could have made along the way in our business, right? So it allows people to see you as more human, right? It allows them to not be on the defensive right away because you're probably going to follow that with some suggestion of how they could do it better or next time or how they could not make that mistake again, right? But if you just come right in with, what are you doing, right? I mean, it's. I think everybody can agree that bringing yourself into it and exposing your own vulnerabilities or your own inadequacies is a way to, like you said, lower yourself so people go, no, yeah, like, okay, you've done that before, okay, phew. Like I'm not the only one that's ever done this. I think that's great.
Okay, next one. We're going to go way back in time. Ben Franklin apparently actually wrote about the phenomenon, right? That people are hardwired to help other people. Like that's just reflex is to help other people. Okay. Sometimes we have to choose not to help. Like how many times do you drive down the road? I know Ben's actually really good at pulling over and helping people, but how many times do you drive down the road? You see somebody on the side of the road. You almost have to talk yourself into, no, I just saw that news article about the person who, so I'm going to keep driving. Right. Because naturally you just want to pull over and help. Or when you see someone carrying, so you just want to help. It's just natural to do it. So since people want to help, here's the next phrase. Can I ask you for some advice? Because as soon as you say, can I ask you for some advice? People are going to be like, ooh, I get to help you, right? And you believe I'm up here. You believe I'm higher than you in that situation because you want my advice. So I must be a little bit more of an expert on the topic we're about to talk about. Okay. And then you can always follow it up with, hey, I took your suggestion, right? Next time we speak, because now all I'm doing is pouring back into you as we go. So Bob, the next one on our list, can I ask you for some advice?
I love that one. again, so much of this, I guess it's just because it's my world every day. Once I turn the podcast microphone off, or I walk away from my desk, is with my kids, and I'll actually do this with my son. My son Chase, the oldest one, he's on my middle son, my wife and I's oldest. He doesn't like confrontation. He just will shut down. He doesn't like really to be told how he could have done it better or whatever. And so I'll do this with him when I'm trying to. So I'll do this. I'll say, "Hey Chase, listen, can I ask your help with this? I can I ask your advice, right?" And I don't necessarily use the word advice with my kid, but I'm like, "Hey Chase, I need your help. I think maybe you could help Daddy with this. What do you think would be some good ways for us to get out of the house on time at 8:30?" Right. And I'll ask him for his advice on that thing that I'm frustrated, because I could just go to him and say, "Hey, how are we going to get out of here better at 8:30, man? Right? You're really making us late. What are you going to do to?" He's just going to shut down. Most people, by the way, when kind of just, especially when it's that, like, I'm trying to ask for their advice on how to impact them or get them to do something.
Yep.
So look, I think anybody that we come to and say, "Can I get some advice from you?" is going to lower their defenses a little bit. They're going to be on the hunt for how they can help us, right? Emotionally intelligent people know that asking a question like that kind of makes people more prideful. They're like, "Oh, hey, what? You want my advice?" Absolutely, right? And they're waiting for it, and it just lays the framework for a better whatever's next, right? Whether that be really I'm looking for advice about something not related to them at all, or maybe I'm looking for advice on how to work with them better, or how to get more out of them, or something, right? So I think that's a great question if we're literally just looking for random advice, or if we're looking for advice on how to work closer with somebody and have a better connection with them.
That's a great point. All right, we're going to twist it a little bit here with this next one on the list, because this one's not as nice, right? The other ones were being nice. The other ones are being very soft entry into the conversation. This one's a little bit harsher. It's one I've heard from Ben a lot. He does this one well. Different word.
I know them, but we're not necessarily going in an order. We kind of jumping around a little bit. I'm pretty sure I know what this next one was, because he does it to me too.
Right. And it's, "I expect a lot from you."
Yeah.
Right. and understand this. "I expect a lot from you" is I expect a lot from you. Right. So it picks us up a little bit until we realize, the swing is coming to chop us down right after that with, but you let me down. Right. Or you came up a little short on this, or you disappointed me by doing this. That's the one that Ben usually likes to use on me. Right. "Hey man, I expect a lot from you, and you disappointed me with your response here, or the result that we got on that, or whatever it might be." So not everything on this list, and hide, EQ people, it's not always just nice things they're saying. Sometimes it's harsh. Bob, you've heard Ben say it. You've heard others say it. What's your take on, "I expect a lot from you, but..."
Look, I
wish you guys could actually see Bob right now, because he's like working the words in his head to say it just right so it doesn't get him fired.
Look, this one I can only give my perspective on this. And I know not everybody, Chad, you and I are a little bit different in this. I think I'm probably more of a people pleaser than you are. You're not quite as malleable to other people's needs and wants as I am. Like I'm a people pleaser, like at my core. And Ben knows this about me. And so to me, that one just cuts like a knife. Like more than anything, it's look, there's two ways he uses this too, by the way. It's not always like to share his disappointment, right? Although he does do that. And Ben's really good at making sure that doesn't fester, and he just lets us know that he was disappointed, and he doesn't sit there and roll it over in his head for 6 months until he's like, "I hate these guys and I gotta get rid of them," right? So he lets us know. So to me, it's highly effective when it's used on me. Like I'm like, yeah, no, totally. I expect a ton out of myself too, and I totally didn't do that thing, and man, I'm gonna do better next time, right? Like, it is good though, because not only am I a people pleaser, I'm also somebody that my love language is words of affirmation. And so just hearing right before he tells me he's disappointed in me that he expects a lot out of me is like, I'm like, okay, cool. Oh yeah, Ted, I did do that. You're right. But here's the other time he uses it. And this is how he used it on me like 2 days ago. We've got this big event coming up next week, and he wanted to make sure I'm going to be in. And so he said, he's like, hey, when are you going to be in town? I'm like, I'll be here that then. And he's like, all right, are you staying through the end of that last day, like all the way to the very end? And I'm like, yeah. And he's like, okay, because I'm going to use you a bunch. I expect a lot out of you. I know you're going to be on your A game. Like, I need you to show up really, really awesome. And I'm like I get off the phone. I'm like, hey, I didn't know I was going to be doing some stuff in the event, but Ben told me I was going to be. Like, it changed my, him telling me to expect a bunch out of me at this thing. Like, he gave me just a little bit of extra energy coming in. And look, he knows what he's doing. He's maybe one of the more emotionally intelligent people that we know. But I think I would say, and he would probably say, not naturally. He's invested time into this. He's read a lot of books on this. He practices these things because he can see that they're highly effective. So, we can all get better at this. Ben's somebody that's gotten better. He's really good at it now, but I don't think he was always this good at it.
Oh, absolutely. He's much better. And clearly he expects little out of me because I did not get that same phone call about the event that's coming. So, all right, let's go on to another one. And this is one I think most of our audience might already use this phrase, yet sometimes they use slang versions of this phrase, Bob. And I think that cleaning that up a little bit could make a big difference. And it's a simple one. It's thank you. Right? And we can replace thank you with please. And we can replace thank you and please with you're welcome. Right? So think about how many times someone say things like, thanks. It feels like a throwaway. Where thank you is that moment of, I'm taking that. That's a complete sentence. Thank you. Right? Think about saying you're welcome instead of like, hey, no problem. Because no problem sounds almost like I'm dismissing you. Right? No problem. I'm off. Whatever. Have a good day. No problem. Getting it done. But saying you're welcome truly acknowledges a response to the situation that's going on. So thank you /please /you're welcome. Stop using the slangs, folks. You're probably using these. Just use them fully.
You know what's funny, Chad, or interesting maybe is, I think most of us, if we were raised by anybody half decent, right? We do these things in public. Yes, thank you. Somebody opens the door. Although, we did the pet peeves episode. I'm pretty sure if I didn't, this would have been a major miss for me. One of my biggest pet peeves, you open the door for somebody and they just walk through the door. You're like, no, thank you. Like, I will literally say, are you serious? No, thanks. Nothing. Trip them right in the back of their foot as they walk in.
We might have to have a pet peeves part 2 episode.
Yeah, we should. But you know what's interesting? I watch in our business a lot of texting happen. So we've got this one business, the sales business. We can, we're trying to help those salespeople get better at the way they interact and talk to people. And one of the most common things that I see is somebody on the other end, a prospect, will say thank you, and the receiver of that will say nothing. In a text, it happens all the time. In fact, it's more likely that you will not reply you're welcome to somebody who says thanks or thank you in a text than it is that you do. I see it every single day. And the thing I'll say to people is I'll say, would it be weird if you were standing on the street with somebody and you had this exact same conversation you had with them in text, and the last thing they said was thank you, and you just spun around on your heels and walked away? Would that be strange?
Yes, very much so.
It'd be super weird, right? They'd be like, what an asshole. But we do this in text all the time, and I'm just as guilty of it, by the way, because text is one of those things where it's like when we get done with this, I'm going to have 23 texts on my phone, right? Or you're Ben Kinney, you got 150 texts. Those, a lot of times they say thanks. In my head, I'm like, okay, cool. They got what they needed from me. I'm done.
Yep.
Walk away, right? But if I was on the street, I would never. But what impression am I leaving on somebody that says thanks and then I just walk away? Look, maybe it's not much of an impression, but I bet if I just took that 5 seconds, 1 second to go, you're welcome. Right? And one of the things in sales that we'll often talk about as that ends, and one of the reasons I hate in our sales environments, it drives me nuts to see the last thing that happened was they sent us a text message. And a lot of times it is just thanks, right? If you're in sales, we take an approach where we're last every time they say something. This is a little bit off to the side here, Chad.
Okay.
I want to get this thought out. We are the last person to say. So when they say thanks, sometimes it's just you're welcome. But what we train and guide our people to do in sales is to establish what you plan to do for that person next, right? So it's like they say thanks, and I say, hey, you know what? You're welcome. Listen, I'm going to set a reminder on my calendar to just reach out to you next month, right, and see how things are going. Or if we force ourselves to be the last one every time when somebody is, again, this is related to text because I see this every single day. People not saying you're welcome, not closing that conversation. We should, right? We should. And obviously out in public, guys, thank yous, pleases, your welcomes are important, but it can be very dismissive if you miss one of those somewhere along the way, right? Like a lot of people are in tune to that. Like, what a jerk. Well, I didn't even say thanks. Like,
yeah. How many times I let somebody in on the road and not a thanks, not a wave, not a right? It's all the
I'm
same.
a total wave. I'm just like, hey, wave, thanks,
Yeah, I mean,
appreciate it.
I can't hear you. You're in another car. I don't know you, but give me the
Realize
wave.
you didn't have to do that.
That's the version of the thanks. So remember, it's not thanks. It's thank you. Remember, it's not, THX. It's thank you. Take the extra step. And by the way, for the grammar people that are out there, it's YOU''RE, right? You're welcome. Spell it right. If you're going to do it, leave me with that last thought of you having horrible grammar to finish it up there. All right, Bob, we got one more left. And I saved this one for last for you.
Okay.
Because you've already talked about it. You've already said, you're such a high people pleaser, right? You need this phrase.
You know what? I do.
You need this phrase. And Bob's agreeing because he's seen the list of the phrases we were going to talk about. So he knows which one's left, obviously. And folks, the phrase is a simple one. Again, it's not a nice one. It's not some, hey, EQ means just being nice to people. And this phrase is no, thank you. Right? No, thank you. Right? Because we've heard the expression, right? Boundaries are needed, right? We have boundaries between people. And a lot of people will step over the boundary and try to pull you to their side. And you've got to be ready to say, no, thank you. Right? My neighbor in our new house has already come over and delivered leftover food because we were out walking one night. We could smell it. His backyard by our garage entrance are close. We're like, I don't know what you're cooking. Now it smells amazing. So the next day he showed up with leftover chicken curry. Now, if we didn't like it, if we don't, EQ would have me say, no, thank you. So that I set the boundary that says, I'm not just going to pretend to make you happy and end up in a situation where I'm just pushing it down the garbage disposal and then saying, oh, that was delicious, and having this false relationship.
He's like, you liar. You didn't eat it. I put poison in there. You're still alive.
That's right. It was supposed to be so hot. I should have heard you screaming, right? Bob, and you need this one because you need to be able to say no thank you to people because they might not be bringing you food you don't want because other than Almond Joys, you eat everything, right? They might be taking your time.
God, I almost threw up in my mouth. You just say Almond Joy? That's so sick.
Yeah, I remember bringing them like last Halloween, all these extra, and all that ended up in front of you was like 20 Almond Joys because you ate everything else that we brought. You just didn't want to touch the Almond Joys. I think it was on a pet peeve episode. You might have even mentioned how bad you hate them. Yet it's your time and you have to respect your time so you can respect other people's time and other people will respect your time. And it's just using the simple, high, emotionally intelligent phrase, no, thank you.
You come up with the, I don't know where we learn all the stuff, right? Like, and so I don't know where I became aware of this. I don't know if it's through my therapist or if it was somewhere in our journey here on Win, Make, Give. But at some point I learned that the things that really drive you nuts about other people tend to be something related to how you operate.
Yeah.
Right. So like, I've got this one of my best friends. His name's Lance. He was my roommate in college. I'm great friends 25 years later. I love this guy. He's like my brother. But he does this thing that drives me batshit crazy. And the reality is I do it to people, or I've done it to people. I try not to anymore, but every time I invite him to something, he'll say, yeah, I'll try to make it. And most of the time, he doesn't make it, which is fine, right? Like I'm inviting him to kids' birthday parties and stuff. And I want to invite my friend, and I get that he doesn't have kids. So he wants to come to a 4-year-old's birthday party, right? But he'll always say every single time, no matter what, hey, I'll try to make it, right? Or, oh yeah, that sounds fun. I'll try. And I know, like, here's the thing. When he really wants to come do something, he says, yeah, what time? Right? Or, yeah, totally. Put me down for one. I'll be at the golf game or whatever, right? But so immediately when he says, oh yeah, that sounds like fun, I'm like, he's not coming. It drives me crazy. And so I had to assess, like, how often do I do that? And the reality was I used to do that a lot. I used to, oh yeah, no, I could try to get to, oh yeah, no, oh yeah, you know what? Like, I'm not sure if I can make it right at 8, but man, I'd love to be there. When the reality is in the back of my head, I was like, I'm not going to that thing. I'm not doing that thing. And what would lead to for me is I had a bunch of hurt friends, right? People that thought I was going to do something that didn't, right? Unfulfilled expectations from people. And so, yeah, I mean, this is a boundary thing, but as much as anything, it's like it's a respect for other people's boundaries and time as well, right? And so, I don't know. I doubt my friend Lance listens to this. I still love you to death, Lance. I'm going to invite you to all this stuff, but I'll just let you know when you do say, oh yeah, that sounds like fun. Like, I know now 25 years later, Lance, you're not coming to my thing, right? Like,
you just say no thank you.
What's that?
Right. If he were more higher EQ, he would just say, no, thank you.
Yeah. Or, you know, again, the
out.
wording itself, you know, he might say, oh man, I'd love to make it, but I can't. I'm sorry. I'm just not going to be able to make it that time. Right.
Yep. All right, folks. So we gave you a list of some phrases that if your EQ is challenged, like Bob and I admit to at the beginning of this call, and Ben would probably say his is challenged, even though we think Ben's got a really dang good handle on it. You got two options. One, go back to season 1, early episodes 11 through 16, and check out the Emotionally Intelligent series, or just steal these phrases. Let's think about why. Can I see if I understand? I make this mistake all the time. Can I ask you for some advice? I expect a lot from you. Please, thank you, you're welcome, and no thank you. These phrases are going to make a huge difference to your EQ. Bob, which one are you going to adopt and attempt to use a lot more in your future engagements and opportunities for it?
I mean, no thank you is I'm constantly battling my own self, right? So, and like most of us are, and one of my things is I'm a people pleaser, and I overextend in a lot of arenas. So I think that no thank you, or just a definitive I'm not going to be able to do that is probably going to be on the top of my list.
All right, and if you're in my world, no. If you're listening to this, can I see if I understand? You might be hearing me ask you that a lot more, so that I stop coming from a place of assuming I know or just wanting to fix and solve your problem my way, no matter what it is. That's going to be the one, Bob, I'm going to work on. Folks, we challenge each and every one of you to grab a phrase and say for the next week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, can you work this into your conversation and dialogue more to watch your EQ continue to rise? Folks, you can always join us in our Facebook group, Win, Make, Give, where we're going to be talking about EQ. You can always join us at winmakegive.com, where you can sign up for things like the Wealth Series 2.0, track our old series that you want to go back to listen to, any of those things like that. And of course, you can always find Bob and I on Facebook, where we will be for you. Until our next episode, folks, as always, do good.